You achieved tremendous success in digital assets as a crypto pioneer in the early days, funding several companies, including Mastercoin and Coinbase, just to name a few. In fact, Forbes named you as one of the richest people in crypto a few years ago with an estimated net worth of $700 million to $1 billion. So given your background, I'm curious to get your take on recent developments in crypto, specifically the burst of institutional interest. In fact, BlackRock filed for a spot Bitcoin ETF, opening the doors for other financial institutions like Valkyrie, Invesco, and WisdomTree. And EDX Markets, a crypto exchange backed by Fidelity, Citadel, and Charles Schwab, recently launched trading in 4 crypto assets, including Bitcoin and Ether. Over the weekend, I actually saw a headline which argued that Wall Street is crypto's new savior. Do you agree with that statement?
I think it's interesting that we're really seeing this adoption from, call it, your major institutional players. We've been watching this through cycle after cycle, but now, I mean, it's at the top of the heap. You know, BlackRock launching this ETF. It's something that the industry has been trying to do for, nearly a decade. Hopefully they get the white glove treatment. Hopefully BlackRock can get done what we could not. And so it's clearly had a major impact on the market. Bitcoin was under 25,000 and now it's, up around 31. So I think the market's happy. Everyone's happy. I think this is a great thing. You've had Terra Luna's implosion, SBF and FTX and BlockFi and Celsius. I mean, it's been a really rough market. So grateful for a wave of good news.
What do you think about this burst of institutional interest amid the backdrop of the SEC's intensified crackdown on crypto exchanges like Coinbase and Binance? What does that signal? The fact that these financial institutions still feel compelled to move into crypto amid that backdrop?
Well, I mean, I think the issue was that people didn't know the rules, right? There's a lot of regulatory ambiguity. And companies like Coinbase have done a very good job of trying to engage with the regulators, consistently attempting to get good guidance. The industry clearly did need some cleanup. There have been some bad actors, as we've seen. I think that the SEC's response here might be a little overboard, and it's definitely having a negative impact.
What do you make of Coinbase's situation in particular? What do you think is going to happen there? Even before Coinbase was officially charged, CEO Brian Armstrong indicated that he might move Coinbase's headquarters overseas because of the lack of regulatory clarity here in the U.S. Do you think that's going to happen now that Coinbase was in fact officially charged?
I think this is terrible. I mean, imagine what the U.S. would be like if the internet wasn't invented here or stood up here. We're living in this 4th industrial revolution. It's imperative that we are leaders in the world, that we're leaders in the new financial system. We're leaders in all these areas. And so I'm very concerned by it. And I hope there's at least a plan that if you don't want Coinbase to own it, hopefully it's the Fidelities and the Charles Schwabs and the BlackRocks. I mean, I don't know what the internal strategy is. I hope there is one, and that there's real thought behind these decisions, because it does affect all of our future. And, these are good companies. Again, Brian Armstrong and Coinbase, they've attempted to do everything right. They're not bad actors. And so I hope that we do not lose our position as leaders as a result of these decisions.
You mentioned that there is regulatory ambiguity here in the U.S., and it's hard for crypto companies to operate here because of that. Meantime, abroad, we're seeing regulatory advancements. In fact, just a few months ago, EU lawmakers approved the world's first comprehensive framework for crypto regulation. And after that, we saw several crypto companies move offshore, expand offshore, and entirely move offshore in some cases. Do you anticipate that's going to continue to happen because of the regulatory advancements overseas and the lack of regulatory clarity here in the U.S.?
Yeah, and we've seen that. We live in a very digital world, right? And COVID definitely accelerated this in terms of our ability to work from anywhere. And there's a regulatory arbitrage, happening here. Governments that say we are in favor of innovation. We want innovation, to happen in our country. You see people move there, whether it be, a bunch of us that have moved to Puerto Rico. That wasn't from regulatory arbitrage, but take El Salvador. President Bukele has made that a place where people are going, and where government says we are in favor of the future, we like innovation, we want to create regulatory clarity, and we are here to work with the private sector, it leads to positive results.
Overall, what is your stance on the SEC's approach of regulation by enforcement? I take it you don't think it's necessarily a good thing. So what do you think is the way to go?
I mean, you've had discussions around who is the right regulatory body. Is it the SEC or is it the CFTC? I tend to have been a bigger fan of the CFTC as the regulatory body, but whatever it is, I think you need clarity. Most of us are just, what are the rules? And make them clear. How do you expect the private sector to perform when it's asking the right questions and not being given answers? And there's a lot of controversy about this. You're seeing many members of Congress that are pushing back on regulation by enforcement. But then again, there's Congress. Where's the legislation coming from? I personally would like to see this on a state-by-state basis. I'd rather see the states be the experiment with regulation so that we get 51 flavors. And from there, then the federal government can eventually, based upon that learning, based upon that knowing, make the best decision, because we want to make the right decision. It's important that I think the U.S. continues to lead, right? What makes America great? It's the fact that, it's the ingenuity of the American people. It's the American dream. It's the fact that we invent so many of the things that impact our world. And it's important to me that America continues to lead, in the area of innovation. And I think our regulatory actions and the decisions that have been coming out of the SEC are very problematic for our future.
Do you think regulation on a state level can really be achieved, or do you think it's going to have to come from Congress? I know you mentioned that's what you would wish for, but do you think it can actually happen?
Well, we'll see. Right now, you've got a Republican House and Democratic Senate and elections coming up. And I think that we would have been looking at some significant and likely problematic legislation. And the saving grace of all of this, and obviously not good for us or our nation, was the demise of Silicon Valley Bank and the crashing of the banks. I think that really just kind of changed the priority, where cryptocurrency was likely going to be looking at some problematic legislation. These bank failures kind of became a bigger priority. So I'm not sure we're going to see much out of the federal government right now, probably until 2025. And what we're likely to continue to see is, the SEC regulating by enforcement, which is problematic. I think most of these companies are going to put up a proper fight. So we'll see what comes out of this. And, but I also have sympathy for, Gary Gensler as well. I don't walk around in his shoes. I don't, have all of the information that he has. But he's going after a number of what appear to be good businesses that have attempted to do the right thing. But maybe he has information I don't. We'll see. I just hope the right decisions are made for our future. I firmly believe that America needs to continue to be a leader in innovation in all its forms, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's quantum computing, whether it's cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. It's important that America is the capital of these industries.
Let's go back to prices, if you don't mind. As you astutely noted, Bitcoin crossed $31,000 last week, the highest level in more than a year. Do you think that positive momentum will continue? Some industry insiders I spoke with argue that we are now out of the so-called crypto winter. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I hope we're out of the crypto winter. Is this a dead cat bounce, or, is this the beginning of the next bull run? Time will tell. There's a lot of things going on that I think, I'm positive. I actually was buying more Bitcoin last week. My timing was exceptional. Last 2 weeks ago. I'm like, with my team, I'm like, are we neutral? Are we bearish or bullish? I'm just like, there's so many things going on right now that, could have a positive impact on Bitcoin and Bitcoin pricing. And very glad I was buying into the market literally days before the big announcement. So the institutional buying is there. A lot of financial uncertainty. A lot of people looking for hedges, rising. Well, the rising interest rates are probably a negative for Bitcoin, right? Because you've got high yields. You can just stick your money into, you're collecting 5.5% interest on cash. So we'll see. I'm bullish. I'm buying more. But that's the $1 million question, right?
Exactly.
Is this are we back into a bull run? And if it is, it usually Bitcoin hits, all-time highs. This bull run, is it the one that we break into the six-figure prices? I have no idea, but I'm rooting for it, and I'm directionally bet long.
I heard you mention in a prior interview that you believe tokenization is inevitable. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, tokenization or digitization, right? The world is going digital. The concept of tokenization is really, are we going to be using a ledger like a blockchain to do that? And I think that's where we talk about it. And so, yeah, I think everything is moving in that direction. Money, securities, our stocks, our bonds, our art. This is the sort of concept of NFTs, right? Is that eventually all title, all assets are going to be, tokenized or digitized on some sort of ledger so that you have certificates of authenticity and you can track title and chain of custody. And I think that is directionally where we're going. But this is something that we'll see it happen over the years and even, the decades ahead. And it'll start with particular asset classes. Digital art obviously is an area where we've seen that kind of go through its first wave and had a huge impact. If you were a digital artist, right, there's very little money that you would make in making your art. You would have to be a graphic designer working at an animation studio or a video game company. And now, due to this tokenization, right, the ability to have scarcity around digital art, these digital creators, these artists have now found a way to make a living doing what they do best. And I think that's a wonderful thing for the world.
Given you've been involved in this space since the 1990s, really, what is your vision for the world, say, in 10 years from now from a crypto perspective?
Well, we're going to see soon. If we don't have mass adoption of this technology within a decade, I'm not sure we ever will. Right? This is that period where real mainstream, use cases, either get the traction or they won't. There's a lot of promise in this technology that we've not seen fulfilled, right? The idea of low-cost transactions for money remittance, for example, but we're starting to see some of that traction in places like Africa. We're starting to see some of that traction in places like Central and South America, but it's still not what I'd say, in that mass adoption phase. A lot of it is still speculation on price. But we're continuing to see the quality of the products at the interfaces. We're getting there, but that's the big question. If they just keep building and driving real world use cases, that makes people's lives better in a material way, and adoption then follows that. And so, and again, most of the time you're not gonna understand what it is. It's kind of like your cell phone. You don't need to know what's inside of the cell phone to use it, right? You just need products and services that are better, faster, cheaper. You don't necessarily need to know that it's, running on a blockchain, sort of ledger. You just need really good, useful things.
What are you focused on right now?
Well, I just got my, I'll run over to the office now. I just took my United Nations permanent mission, part of OIJ, which is Spain, Portugal, Dominican Republic, and every country in Central and South America. So I spend a lot of time talking to world leaders, to help them find innovative tools to solve their greatest problems, whether it be places like El Salvador and their Bitcoin law, and helping the government there implement that. But then I'm also working with lots of other governments. I spend a lot of time in Congress I'm very active in government these days. But then as an entrepreneur, continuing to start new businesses. We've got some really exciting, stuff. Self. So I was one of the founders of Tether. We created the U.S. digital dollar. And so with Craig Sellers, who was CTO at Mastercoin with me, and then Phil Potter, who was the chief strategic officer of Bitfinex and Tether, we have a digital identity play, self-sovereign identity, trying to figure out the identity solution for the world. And it's important that it's done right. Like this is one of those areas where, like what you see in China and their social credit scoring systems, right? If we get identity wrong, it could be a tool to enslave humanity. And if we get it right, it could be a tool to liberate humanity. And as an American, I'm obviously rooting for the one that's on the side of freedom. And so we're doing that recently. Love.com. We're doing some really neat things around commerce. I've gotten into the hospitality business. I do a lot of hotels. I'm in airports, marinas, space.
Is there a crypto connection there?
Well, there's always technology in everything. So if you're in the hospitality business, I'm always trying to use technology in everything I do. I'm in a little bit of everything. So I'm working on some new layer ones. Libre, speaking of freedom, that's a new wallet that we launched that allows you to send 25 cents, $1 from here to someone in Africa, essentially with no fees and instantaneously. And that was designed actually coming out of El Salvador. I mean, I think I've got like 500 projects. So
clearly you've been busy, but you did mention that you have been spending a lot of time with government officials. And speaking of politics, you ran for president back in 2020 as an independent. So I'm curious to know what prompted you to run back then, and if you have any plans to run again in 2024.
Well, when we talk about a blockchain, right, and we talk about cryptocurrency, it's a ledger, but it's also a system of governance, right? What is our primary system of governance? That thing that governs over us, it's our government. And so as someone that experiments with systems of governance and studies governance, it would make sense that I would eventually go spend time in our government. I announced on July 4th of election year in 2020, which means there's no way to win. It was a reconnaissance mission. I wanted to understand all the ways in which the system or game is rigged. If you're running as a Democrat for a Republican, you have all that existing infrastructure and rails. You really just need to be a candidate. But if you actually want to try and run as a third party, you don't have that infrastructure. And so there's a tremendous amount of learning that has to occur. And so that was a trial run so that I could, either as me or someone else, do it successfully in the future. And so I'm very involved in the election cycle. And as an independent, we don't have primaries. So there's a very different calendar that we run from. The election for an independent is really election year, because you don't want to. You want to see what's going to happen with the two major parties first. Who are the candidates going to be, so that you can choose your tactics accordingly. Kind of amazing. 2016, 2020, 2024. What an unusual world we found ourselves in. But important, I think, for everybody. The future is going to happen to you, or it's going to happen with you. Your participation is needed.
So do you think you will be putting your hat in the mix in 2024?
I mean, we'll see. I'm always ready. I'm ready to go.
It sounds like a strong possibility.
I did it once so that I could do it again and again. Now, the good news is I'm only 42, so whether it's the 2024 cycle, 2028, 2032, and more than anything, hopefully we find someone better. I don't really want the job. I'm willing.
Like you're busy with all your projects in itself.
Yeah, but I admire anyone that has the courage to step into the arena. We need great candidates running for office. From city council on, all the way up to the presidency. And I would encourage more Americans, to consider a tour of duty in public service. I'm I'm a father. Like, I care about our future. Our participation, whether it be voting or running and serving, is important for all of our well-being.
So what will it take for you to officially put your name in the mix for 2024?
I want to see what happens with the Democrats and the Republicans right now. I think that we're getting a lot of clarity on the Republican side. I think we've got a fair amount of clarity on the Democratic side, but it's politics. A lot can happen. And so I'm just trying to get more information. And again, and that can change too.
Hopefully you'll come back on Crypto World and speak with us when you do, in fact, if you do, in fact, decide to run in 2024.
Well, I'm always running. The question is, running where? And on behalf of who? Whether I'm running for office, I'm always in the background trying to do everything I can for all of us.
Do you think crypto is going to play a role in the 2024 election at all?
I think we've already seen that. You know, the crypto community is sizable in terms of numbers. And they're single issue voters. You know, there are a lot of Democrats that are into cryptocurrency. There are a lot of Republicans that are into cryptocurrency. It's not just libertarians. And a lot of them are single issue voters. And I think it is going to have an impact on our elections going forward. I think we're going to see that. And so we'll see about money and dollars contributed. The cryptocurrency community has not shown up in terms of big super PACs or big PACs or major financial contributions yet. I mean, other than with Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, he was definitely making big donations. But yeah, we're not seeing it show up in the wallets yet. But in terms of the votes, I think we're going to see the crypto community as a meaningful voter bloc. That's up for grabs.
Expanding on the FTX collapse, I recently reviewed an 83-page comprehensive report with a whole chapter dedicated to crypto's, quote, image problem, especially after all the scandals that took place last year, including the collapse of FTX. So I'm wondering, especially because you have been in crypto before its inception, I'm wondering what you think it will take for crypto to surpass this, quote, image problem.
It goes through cycles. You know, we're, I think, in one of the positive cycles right now. Obviously, Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, Terra Luna, Do Kwon, all of these characters, you know, sent yet again us into another negative news cycle. But, you know, with BlackRock and all the major institutions coming in, I think, you know, we go through these things and we need them. You know, it's basically we have a bull market. It attracts some bad actors. Some bad behavior occurs and you got to clean up. And by the way, it's like, but that's us in life too, right? You know, spring cleaning. Summer is here. Hopefully this is the sign of that bull market. But yeah, there'll be more. Well, there will be more negative news cycles. We will have more bad events will occur. Hopefully new ones, not the same ones. And, you know, hopefully we do a better job of self-regulating, right? Hopefully as active market participants, we, you know, empower the right people, fund the right people, and don't find ourselves in these negative places that result in the negative news cycles.
It certainly will be interesting to see what happens. Brock Pierce, Bitcoin Foundation Chairman, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.